Welcome to the Keto Geek Podcast. Let's do this.
Health, nutrition, fitness, low-carb lifestyle.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the Keto Geek Podcast. This episode, like every other episode, is brought to you by us, Keto Geek. So what exactly do? We make these kick-ass little products in the form of cups called energy pods. You can go to ketogeek.com and visit our shop section where you can find these tiny little pods that you can take anywhere with you on your keto journey. They're shelf-stable products and you can consume them on the go. We love them. Initially, we made these for ourselves, but decided to share with everybody else, and turns out people got hooked to it. Now we sell them. My personal favorite, of course, is the chocolate fudge energy pod, but I've started to move towards the pecan coconut one. There's a hint of Christmas spices in it, which I seem to start enjoying. Maybe it's because I've eaten so much chocolate that I want a different flavor now. So that is starting to grow on me. We also make ghee, so if you're looking for some sweet and very caramelized, warm ghee, which has a very unique flavor profile based on the people that have tested, have told us. So if you're looking for that, we also make ghee ourselves in our own Keto Geek kitchen. So there's plenty of options for you guys. And please go to our website and check those product outs. Now let's do a little bit of a house cleaning because we have a lot to share now. First of all, our friends in Hungary, Paleo Medicina, are having clinical open days between April 5th and 7th, and the registration for that is now open. You can also view their presentation online. The link to the registration and their landing page will be in the show description. It is in English, which is fantastic. Some of the speakers that will be on their open days include people that have been on this podcast, including Amber O'Hearn, Dr. Thomas Seyfried, and Dr. Sophia Clemens, and many, many more. So it will be a joyride. I will personally go there myself too, and it's going to be a very interesting event. Lots of new stuff to learn there, especially the carnivorous and the zero-carb sort of lifestyle. Moving on. So we also now are looking for people who have battled through their life or had success with a low-carb, ketogenic, or zero-carb carnivorous diet, whatever the story is. We are looking for people to share their story with us, and there will be a link in the show notes where you can go ahead and tell us about your journey, your struggles, and everything. If you guys have before and after pictures, we're more than happy to include those. If you have links to your blogs, we are more than happy to take those as well. And there's a high chance that you might get featured in our newsletter, our social media, and basically everywhere where Keto Geek is. It's time to grow our community and let people know that the diet works. Let's break through all this dogma and crazy thinking and all this bad information against the ketogenic lifestyle. So let's change the world. Oh, and by the way, if you are listening to this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes or your podcast app. It means a lot. I'm going to pause for about 3 seconds and let you guys give us a review. Okay, so let's get back. Our Nutty Carnivore Challenge will take place in March, and if you guys haven't started the diet, then this will be a great way to get some knowledge and get something more organized going on as far as the diet itself is concerned. I will keep you guys posted on our newsletter, on our website, and everywhere, basically. We are currently recording videos and writing stuff about it, so there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Meanwhile, you can also check out the 21-day keto challenge that our guest today, Rachel Gregory, has on her website. The link to that challenge and her website will be in the show notes as well. And she's a pretty laid and chill person while I had a conversation with her, and I highly recommend checking her out. She seems like one of the good people in the ketosphere. So, who exactly is Rachel Gregory? So, Rachel is a board-certified nutrition specialist, athletic trainer, and strength and conditioning coach. She received her master's degree in nutrition and science physiology from James Madison University and bachelor's in sports medicine from the University of Miami. Rachel has vast knowledge on the science and application of the ketogenic diet for weight loss, performance, and overall health. She has also conducted a clinical trial looking at the ketogenic diet in CrossFit athletes, which was published in the International Journal of Sports and Exercise Medicine. She has presented her research at numerous conferences and worked closely with doctors and scientists specialized in the low-carb and keto lifestyle. She's also the founder of the Killin It Keto LLC. By the way, I did ask her the question. I mean, Killin It Keto? But then again, when I started Keto Geek, I wanted to be the chief wizard architect of Keto Geek, so we're all just a little weird. Oh, and she's also the creator of the 21-Day Keto Challenge. She has worked with a variety of individuals throughout her careers, and that include Division I collegiate athletes, WNBA stars, and some of the top bodybuilders in the world. She has a passion for educating those interested in optimizing their physical and mental well-being while improving long-term health goals. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring to you the conversation I had with Rachel Gregory. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Rachel Gregory on board on our podcast. And Rachel, how is life?
Life's great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I came across you during Low Carb USA 2017, and I loved San Diego, and I believe that's where you are, correct?
Yep. I'm here in San Diego. I've been here for a few months now.
Why San Diego?
Good question. I'm originally from New York, and I lived in Florida this past few years. And me and my best friend were really just looking for a change. And I was in a job that I wasn't really very passionate about. I worked as a nutrition scientist for a supplement company. But my true passion is, keto and teaching people about the low carb, ketogenic lifestyle. So I kind of just, quit my job, and we decided to move out to the West Coast, explore here. And we came in October, and everything has just been amazing so far. So yeah, it's been great.
I think there's a drive towards self-entrepreneurship in our younger generation, especially when it's so easy to access. Like, for example, if you just have an Instagram account, you can just start your own business and create your own ecosystem. So are you noticing this among other people in general, or do you see this drive by any chance?
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly kind of how I started with my business. My friend told me to create an Instagram account because I was always taking pictures of the food I was eating, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then she kind of convinced me, and I ended up doing it, and it was just a hobby, and it kind of turned into a business, and turned into the business that I'm doing now. But I really think, there's a trend towards that, and I think it's good, and I think it's different than from what our, parents' generation is used to, in terms of having a full-time job and having the benefits and going that route. Because that's kind of what I did with my last job. It was, the whole, benefits and full-time and kind of, 8 to 5 each day, and good pay too. So, it was a solid foundation, but at the same time, it wasn't what I was passionate about, and it wasn't something that I could see myself doing for a long time. So I definitely just, took a leap of faith and decided to, follow what I was really passionate about. And I think that is something that some people may have, in older generations may have, looked back and kind of maybe regretted that. So I definitely encourage anybody who, has any type of passion, just take the leap, get out of your comfort zone, and just do it.
Yeah, and considering how we notice that a lot of people go to college and then end up with huge loans, and then it becomes difficult to find a job in the first place. So this drive towards taking the situation into your own hands, we're noticing this everywhere across the society, which brings me to a question, which is why nutrition and exercise?
Yeah, so I grew up playing sports my whole life. I grew up playing basketball and softball. And so I was always, an athlete. And I also was very into, concerned about, body image and all of that type of thing. And, I tried all different types of diets, and I was never, like overweight, but I always had, body image issues and a lot of, what typical teenage girls grow up with. And so I went to college, and I got my undergrad in athletic training, sports medicine. And I thought that that's what I wanted to do for my, for my career. I thought I wanted to be an athletic trainer for a sports team because I love sports and I was super into that. And I did love, athletic training. I went to the University of Miami for undergrad, and I loved the program and met a ton of amazing people, worked with a lot of great athletes. And I was an athlete myself. I did triathlons in college for the club team. And I got to my junior year and really started getting into nutrition. I took some more nutrition classes and realized that I was, super interested in that. But it was kind of, too late to go back and do the dietetics route, which is what most, obviously dietitians go through that. So I decided that I wanted to get my master's in nutrition, and I was able to go on to grad school at James Madison University and actually get my master's paid for me while working as an athletic trainer for the swim and dive team there. So that's really where nutrition kind of came about for me. And also as a triathlete, nutrition is a huge part of training and all of that. So I really struggle with that as well. I think a lot of people did or still do, especially with the whole, carb loading and all of that type of stuff. And that really did affect me in my triathlons, looking back now at it. So yeah, that's what got me involved.
Yeah. So if you were to go back in time, somehow magically we had Doc Brown or Doctor Who on board with us, and you went back in time, and what would be some of the things that you would change in your education that you think were just bunk?
So in my grad school, my nutrition education in grad school?
Correct.
Well, a lot of our education is obviously based on the USDA guidelines, and what, everybody is really taught here about nutrition and carbohydrate, fat, protein intake, and all of that. And I mean, I had to, when I got into the ketogenic diet, I, basically just taught myself about it. We didn't have any really coursework in anything like that. And it's funny because I actually talked to my advisor a few weeks ago. I called him just to check in. He's the director of the nutrition and dietetics program for both the undergrad and the master's program. And I asked him what he thought of all this with the newer research coming out on, low carb diets and low fat and all of that stuff. And he said that, research is coming out, but it's still going to take a long time for these guidelines to be changed. And a lot of it has to do with the politics and the money behind it and all of that type of stuff. So I would, even in the programs that are going on now, I would just encourage everybody to look outside of the curriculum and start to do their own research and start to question their teachers and have their teachers look into the research that's coming out now and really, just dive into it and look at the practical applications and all of that type of thing.
Any idea how long it takes till the latest research actually gets into the curriculum?
So I asked my advisor that question too, actually, and he said, because the USDA guidelines come out every 5 years, so the next ones will be in 2020. And I asked him, do you think there'll be any changes? And he said that it's going to take years for that to happen. That's what he thought, just from being in that space and knowing, I guess, the people up there. But that was kind of like a bummer from when I heard that. But who knows? Like, it could, as the research continues and people are, obviously keto is very big right now, and I'm hoping that it's not just something that people look at as like a buzzword or fad or anything like that. I think it has so much more potential than that. So I think just continuing to do the research and to do, just the anecdotal stuff. So people like everybody doing these N=1 experiments and all of that type of thing, just getting the word out there. I think hopefully that will, change the minds of some people.
Yeah. So let's say if I'm an athlete in college or at a higher level, and I don't believe in the guidelines that the coach is giving, but everybody's hands are tied because of sponsorship, because of the money. What do I do?
Yeah. So I would just say to kind of go out and do your own research. So by that, I don't mean, Google one thing and take the first thing you see on Google and take that as the truth. Just really dive in a little bit deeper and kind of see the people like in your space. So if you're a particular athlete, look into, say for triathlons. So if you're a triathlete, look into, different people who have been utilizing keto or low carb for their performance and, test it out. You don't have to broadcast it because a lot of people who go keto or low carb, they tend to talk about it a lot. And then that's where a lot of people, it's different. So a lot of people come back and say, oh, like you shouldn't be doing that or all that stuff. So, test it out for yourself and just do your own research would be the main takeaway on that.
Is that the same takeaway for coaches and trainers as well? Or some of them have a little bit more power here because they're independent people? Or can you add something for them as well besides the point you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think for everybody, it kind of goes back to right now for coaches and trainers and even doctors. It's kind of going against the standard of care. So that's a huge issue that even, right now working with local doctors here in San Diego, that's a huge issue they're facing because if they want to implement, these type of, ketogenic low carb guidelines, they're going against the standard of care. And so that's something that a lot of people fear, getting in trouble with that type of thing and different authorities and stuff like that. If something goes wrong, just other stuff like that. And then the politics behind it and all of that. So, it's kind of just, like I said, doing your own research and testing on yourself, trying things out for yourself and seeing if they're working for you. And then show the research and show what you've learned to people. And don't just tell them what to do, but kind of explain to them why you're doing it. So if you're a trainer and you're trying to implement this for your athletes, instead of just saying, okay, eat this, don't eat that, just explain to them why and try to figure out how to implement it in a way that they can understand it and they can learn from it. And they're not just saying, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this, but they're really understanding what's going on in their body and why these things are changing and why they're happening.
You mentioned something called politics. So what's going on behind the scenes? I'm kind of curious. What are some of these limiting factors?
Yeah, so I think it's just a lot of the money and all of the stuff that's going into, manufacturing all of these different foods and, processed foods, and even like with the USDA. So we have like the United States Department of Agriculture. Those are our guidelines, and the last word is agriculture. So all of the grains and all of the processed stuff, like that's coming out of these big companies that are making money off of this stuff. So I think a lot of these companies have a lot of money, and they're able to kind of swipe the research and stuff under the rug and not make it accessible for people to actually know, the truth about, say dietary fat. We're all taught fat is bad and, fat is the devil. And thank God, like it's starting to come out, and more research is starting to, surface that it's not. But I think there's still a ways to go with that type of thing. So.
Yeah, one of my concerns would be, what about keto? This is a baby booming sort of movement that's going on here. So my concern is, could the same politics enter into this domain as well? Are we seeing some of that happen? Some entrenchment going on? So do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I definitely think that, there is a market now for a lot of companies to come on and make products and tout them as, keto or low carb. And with exogenous ketones, for example, and other stuff like that, I do think there's a few companies out there and a lot of companies that are in it for the right reason, and definitely just trying to create products that they can use themselves and that they believe in and that they want to share with other people. I really believe in that. I believe that making keto a lifestyle is very important. So finding alternatives for, high carb things and treats and sweets and stuff like that. If that helps people stay on this as a lifestyle rather than looking at it as just a diet, I think that's going to be a huge thing. And I think there are a bunch of companies out there like, you guys, Keto Geek, making the energy pods, and then just some other companies creating these, keto-friendly foods that are, actually good quality and a good, treat once in a while and stuff like that. But there's also companies who are out there, starting to put, this is, keto-friendly, here's one net carb, when in reality you turn the label over and there's like 30 different ingredients with a bunch of sugar alcohols that aren't obviously keto friendly, and stuff like that. So I think that the main thing with that is educating people on what to look for and what constitutes keto friendly and what is not. And then with exogenous ketones, more research on that is definitely needed, especially with the esters versus salts. And I think that they do have potential in some areas, but marketing them as, a magic weight loss pill is the least effective thing you can do, because that's just what, people want to hear. Hey, take this and you'll lose weight. But we both know that's not the reality. So.
Yeah, and this is where people like yourself keep the entire industry grounded, because you guys are paragons, or watchdogs as I call them, that protect us from bad knowledge, bad education, and some people look up to you and several of the other educators that are in our industry, and it's good to have you guys and being honest about everything. It means a lot. But here's a question. Why keto? How did you get into keto?
Yeah, good question. So when I went on to grad school at JMU to get my master's, we had a 2-year program, and part of the program was doing a thesis. So you had to basically pick a subject that had to do with nutrition. And so my master's was in nutrition, exercise, physiology. So it was a subject that had to do with nutrition and exercise. So I had gone to grad school and I kind of put triathlons away for a while and joined a CrossFit gym just, for fun. It was just something new that I was trying out, and I actually really enjoyed it and really enjoyed the community there. So I got really into that, and then it was time to pick a topic for my thesis. And a lot of my other classmates were doing just different online survey type things. And this was something that you had to study for and be a part of for 2 years. And I knew that I wasn't really going to be interested in doing something like that. So I decided to do a human study. And a lot of people told me that, I wouldn't have time and just being an athletic trainer, it wasn't possible. Even my advisor was very hesitant of it, but I figured why not just go for it. If I fail, I fail. But, so basically I found keto because I was looking for a topic to do my, thesis on. And originally I was going to look at the paleo diet in, CrossFit athletes, but I had come across Jimmy Moore's book, Keto Clarity, when I was doing research, read it in about a day and was just fascinated by everything. So I started digging more into the research, and decided to look at the ketogenic diet in a exercise population, and the population I used was CrossFit athletes, non-elite CrossFit athletes.
Okay. And so that's how you got into that research that I think Ryan Lowry has already mentioned it on our podcast. So what happened during that research?
Yeah, so it was a 6-week study, and what we looked at was basically we wanted to see if the participants who were eating a ketogenic diet could lose weight and lose body fat in a 6-week period compared to their control group who was eating the standard American diet, basically. So we had 30 participants, and we randomly divided them into 2 groups. One group was just following the standard American diet, what they were normally eating, and we made sure that they weren't following any other particular type of diet. And then the other group, we put them on a low-carb keto diet. And the main thing that we said was to keep their total carbs under 50 grams a day. And so we did pre and post test measurements using DEXA scan for body composition. We did a benchmark CrossFit workout for time, and we did some other power tests. And so throughout that 6 weeks, we tested urine ketones. We didn't have the capacity to do blood ketones because we just didn't have the funding for that. So we tested urine ketones, and we used a machine that we were able to get a number rather than just, the different dark purple or pink or something like that. So we tested urine ketones every Friday, and we looked at both groups. So to make sure that the ketogenic diet group was producing ketones, and to make sure that the control group was not, because we wanted them to be following, the standard diet. And so we controlled that. And then we also took food records throughout the study for all subjects, and we put those into a food analysis software and got all that stuff. And basically the results were that the ketogenic diet group, after 6 weeks, were able to lose a significant amount of body fat. So on average, it was about 2.5% body fat, about 7.5 pounds, and then about 3.5 pounds of fat mass. And that was the average. So not every single person, lost 2.5%. But within the group, that was the average. And then the cool thing was, the keto group didn't lose any muscle mass, or their lean body mass had no change compared to the control group. And they were able to increase their performance at the same rate that the control group was. So those were the main results.
Why do you think they had a more fat loss during this process? What could be the reasons? Potential. Just
being on a ketogenic diet. So You know, the appetite suppressant effects of keto is one thing. I mean, there was no huge difference in, which is interesting. The keto diet group did have a little bit lower caloric intake based on their food logs, but there was no significant difference than the control group. But then also just what keto does in general. So more energy throughout the day, more, ability to, once they kind of got over that hump of the first week, being able to, perform a little better. Obviously, it took, a lot of people say it takes a few weeks to become adapted, or even a few months, which is definitely true. And we would have loved to have this study longer, but that wasn't the case, because we just didn't have time. But so, yeah. Okay. Did that answer the question? Sorry, I got off track.
So how do you guys procure funding? Like, let's say someone wants to do a study. Like, I want to do a study. I'm not qualified though. But if somebody wants to do a study, what do they do and how do they acquire funding?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I haven't been too much into the research aspect in that realm since after grad school. So I've only done it through a educational platform. So when we did it through there, we had to get, all the IRB approval and all of that stuff. So I'm not super familiar with the funding aspect of it if you're just, a regular person trying to get funding for that. But I do know that there's more things popping up. So like, for example, you mentioned Ryan Lowry, and Jacob Wilson at ASPI. So that would be, if we could have those all over the place, that type of facility where we could do research like that and get funding from different places the way that they do, I think that would be huge. And yeah, so I don't know exactly how the funding works, but just from my experience, I mean, we didn't have any funding. It was just based on, the university and their requirements.
Yes, and it's getting interesting because from what you're telling me, the universities are sort of getting to be left behind in the dust, while the private sort of research companies seem to be spearheading. And then you also have the citizen scientists who are just going wicked crazy and taking some huge risks. Dave Feldman, I suppose. So what do you think is going to happen in the world of research? Are there any paradigm shifts about to happen anytime soon?
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like with what Dave Feldman's doing, and now, Sean Baker has his whole website with his, people just sending in their data, and obviously it's hard because it's hard to control those things with individuals, and I think in the research world that's looked at as kind of looked down upon because it's anecdotal and everybody's different and you're not controlling different factors. But then at the same time, there's a lot of research out there where you have people who are, in the university settings or who are in the research labs and pharmaceutical places and stuff like that, where they're, coming up with hypotheses and they're, trying to prove that hypothesis right. So I think that approach is what's kind of hurting a lot of the research that's out there. And so being able to, ideally you want to go into research study and you want to try to prove your hypothesis wrong so that you can actually, you're not biased, and obviously double-blind studies are the best for that. But sorry, getting back on track, I think that all these N=1 experiments are very interesting, and I think it definitely will change the research down the line. And then obviously all the technology that we have now that we may not have had, 10 years ago, where you can have these online forums and these places where you can enter your information and get your blood test done, go into any lab and get the blood test done that you want. I don't think that was really a thing, a while back. So I think building that technology up is definitely going to change things for sure.
Yes, and this gets a little interesting because On one side, you have people who go on a, let's say, carnivorous or zero carb diet like Sean Baker and his crew, and they actually notice some great benefits. And then you have some other anecdotes that are product based. Like, for example, some people have sent us messages on our Instagram and mentioned that exogenous ketones are doing these things. Now, there might be truth to it, but then it makes you skeptical which one to trust. How do you trust how do I make sense out of this madness? Do you have any filters as far as filtering out information is concerned?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that right now we're in a place where there's so much different information that everybody's, just thrown into. And I just think that the research too is still not there. Like, I think keto is still very new, and we don't really know that much. As much as we do know, there's so many more question marks that we don't know. And I think filtering out the information, it's just, looking at where it's coming from, who's talking about it, what they're basing their research on, and for example, a supplement. So for a supplement company, are they, third-party tested? Are they tested by outside sources? Where are they sourcing their stuff from? Looking at things like that and just, digging a little deeper into it is a huge thing. And then also just, really looking at who is coming out, who's giving the information, and kind of just also using your gut feeling. So if you're following someone who, you've been following for a while and you believe in them and you trust them, use your gut feeling, because I think that's a huge thing as well. But it's hard because it's very hard to filter out that kind of stuff. But like you said, as long as we have people who are in it for the right reasons, and I think that's really cool about the keto community, is that although we all are competing in some way, it's still such a family-oriented community, I feel, and everybody's kind of out there. Well, at least people that I try to stay in contact with are out there for the better reason and for the whole picture, which is to get people healthier and to help promote, better health and more longevity and that type of stuff. So.
And one of the interesting things that I'm a little personally a little skeptical about is how certain supplementation could work in a high carb setting, but I don't know how that would translate into a ketogenic diet. So have you wondered, like, let's say caffeine is considered to be, let's say, a standard goal that it's always going to work no matter what diet you're following. Mm-hmm. So are there issues with that sort of approach, or how do we counter that? Any thoughts on this matter?
Yeah, so I think, in terms of exogenous ketones and stuff like that right now, like I said, the research is still so young. And there is a lot going on with, the ketone esters, and I'm hoping more we'll start to look at the salts and stuff like that. But I think there is potential for exogenous ketones in, different performance settings, therapeutic settings, stuff like that. But in terms of, touting that you can have, eating McDonald's every day and processed food, and then taking a supplement is going to, combat all of that. I think that is definitely something that we need to get away from. But, from an athlete's point of view, being able to have more metabolic flexibility, I always, encourage a low carb keto diet for anyone, because you can kind of, get into that and use that from the start, and try to, enhance your metabolic flexibility, be able to, tap into your fat stores and the potential to spare, that glycogen stores for, your different competitions and stuff like that. And then maybe, adding in exogenous ketones if you see fit and for the type of competition that you're participating in. So, I mean, we do know that ketones are just another fuel source. And we do know that, our brain and our heart actually prefer to use ketones. And there is some research out there that, in conjunction with carbs, our brain and heart utilize ketones more efficiently and prefer that. So I think it has potential, especially in the performance realm. But at the same time, there just needs to be way more research done, and especially on the different types that are being used. So I think it's just still super young, but yeah.
What kind of clients do you normally take?
So right now I'm starting to work with more, I'm teaming up with a local doctor here in San Diego. He's an internal medicine doctor, Dr. Brian Linsky's, and then also with another nutritionist / trainer who has his own business here called the Tri-System Health Network. And we're really trying to, so basically Dr. Linsky's practice is a lot of type 2 diabetic patients. And he's had a lot of success within a very short time, taking a lot of his patients off of their medicines, their insulin, stuff like that, by implementing a low-carb keto diet. So I'm starting to work more with his patients, and the issue with that is that he doesn't have, doctors are very busy and they don't have time to explain all the, the tidbits to the patients and stuff like that. So that's kind of where the nutritionists and dietitians come into play and can really, explain what you have to do, all the nutrition behind it. And so that's kind of what I'm doing now. And that's what I have geared my, my business around, a 21-day keto kind of course that I implement for most of my clients, especially in the beginning. So I basically put them through this course. It teaches the basics, but it also teaches for people who have tried keto in the past, if they are at, a plateau or a stall, or they tried it and they haven't had success. I've created a program that implements basically everything that I've been learning over the past 3 years, and I've seen maybe mistakes and just different things that don't work or do work, and just implementing that over a 21-day period, so that I found that a lot of people, when they first try to embark on a ketogenic diet, it's very overwhelming, and there's a lot of information, like we were talking about, out there, and it's really hard to weed through like the right stuff and what's really working. And yes, it is individualized, but at the same time, there are some basics that a lot of people need to learn in the beginning. So that's kind of what this program I've developed, and I continue to develop it each day and add and change things as I learn. And so that's what I've been doing mostly. And then after that, I do some more individual consulting if they need, individualized help after that, because everybody's different. Depends what, your age, your activity level, everything. There's so many different factors that play into it. And one thing that works for one person is not going to work for the other. So the 21 days is basically like getting you into that, teaching you, the nuts and bolts, and then also kind of diving into some of the myths and some of the other things that I've come across over my few years of teaching people about it. And then after that, it turns into more individualized.
Do you still take clients for athleticism and training?
Yeah, I'm starting to a little bit more. I do some like individual consulting, and that's what we're really trying to get. I'm in the process of still figuring that out too, how I want to go about that part of it. I've been focusing really on the 21-day challenge right now and really perfecting that. And I think that with that, my main focus with that is that a lot of the programs out there and a lot of the books and stuff, they just give you information and say, okay, go off and do this. Or, some programs, even other challenges, there's some out there that are run by people, and you don't really get any one-on-one answers. So the idea of the 21-day challenge is that it's all there, and I'm perfecting it every day. But then at the same time, once you join the challenge, you have access to email me your questions throughout. So I respond to you within 24 hours, and any specific questions you have, you'll have me like as a resource for that. And then same with, working with individual clients and different athletes. I'm not doing much of that at the moment just because I'm focusing on a few other things, but I'm definitely want to continue that in the future.
What can they expect when they go on a challenge? Like, is this going to be a weight loss sort of thing for them, or is this reversing type 2 diabetes? So any idea on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people go into different challenges like this for, weight loss as a goal. But this is supposed to be, yes, weight loss will be, an effect of it if you follow it correctly. But, it's really for anybody who's looking to learn more about this lifestyle, and learn the right information. And also now that I'm working with a local doctor here, Dr. Lenski's, we're actually going to start incorporating different lab work and stuff like that, where people, we can tell them, okay, here's the labs. If you're interested in getting your blood work done or your insulin levels tested, here's the lab work that you should get done. Go to your physician or go to your, local Quest Diagnostic Center, and you can get this lab work done, and then you fax it to us and we'll look over it and see how it looks, see if there's any red flags. And if there are, the doctor you can do kind of a consult with our internal med doc. So that's stuff that we're adding on. And I think, as it progresses, it's going to get more individualized. And so I think it's for anybody who's just looking to learn about keto, whether you have type 2 diabetes, and anything like that.
Okay. Why call it Killin It Keto?
Good question. When I created my Instagram about a little over a year ago now, I was just, like I said, it was a hobby. It wasn't meant to be a business or anything like that. So I was like, I'm just going to, come up with a fun name, why not? And it just happened to be Killin It Keto. That was just, it was available as a, I don't know, what's it called? The domain. I don't know. But, so I had that, and then I started to get more and more followers, and it kind of just stuck. And then, I thought about when I was creating the LLC, I thought about, having a more professional name. And I, got some different advice from different people and stuff like that. But, after a few weeks of contemplation, I really, thought about it and thought, okay, like I already have this following, and it's supposed to be something that's enjoyable and kind of fun in some way. And so that's why I wanted to be a little bit different and just keep that name and, Killin It Keto.
No, that's interesting. Every time we do our live streams or check out some of the comments on Instagram or social media, we're always curious, what's up with that name? Some of them are tongue twisters, which are really confusing.
Yeah.
So one question here would be, how would you approach nutritionists, physicians, and various experts who may have a very negative opinion about the ketogenic diet or just indifferent towards it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of, like we were talking about, the standard of care. So I think with different, nutritionists and physicians out there, I just encourage them to look deeper into it. Don't believe what you hear. Do your own research and try it out on yourself and see how you feel with a low carb keto lifestyle. And it doesn't have to be that you're trying to lose weight or anything like that, but just like we know all of the other benefits that come along with it. So the mental clarity, stable energy, stable blood sugar throughout the day, just everything that goes along with it. So I think anybody can benefit from, adopting a low carb lifestyle. And so I definitely encourage everybody to try it themselves. And, once you, try it for yourself, but also, doing the research first. So doing it the right way, or at least trying to. So that's a huge thing. A lot of people go out and they're like, oh, I'm going to follow ketogenic diet, but they're not, implementing certain things that you need to implement, such as replacing your electrolytes or eating enough fat, just little things like that really make a big difference when you're first starting off.
Okay. So based on your observation, what are some of the challenges people face when getting on a ketogenic diet on an emotional side?
On an emotional side. So what do you mean by that?
Like, are they stressed out? Are they freaked out? Or are they do they go through these emotions? Or is it like an easy transition? I know it's a subjective and a very generalized question at the same time, but what kind of hurdles do people face when they get on sort of a ketogenic diet, or they might go and take some sort of a challenge like your challenge?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest hurdles is that, with all of the information out there and with, just like your peers. So going out to dinner or something like that, that's like a huge, going out on Friday night and, getting burgers and fries, and you're the one sitting there ordering, a burger on a lettuce wrap and getting, a side salad. I think the social interaction is a huge thing. I definitely address that in the challenge as well. What else? I think just with any type of diet that you go on, it's looked at as, a short-term thing. So that's another thing that I really encourage, is that looking at it more as a lifestyle than a diet, and trying to adopt it in that type of way kind of takes a little bit of the ease off of it. And then also just, like I said, not, okay, we're talking about the emotional part of it though. You
don't have to if you don't want to.
Going into the physical part of it. I think with emotional, having the support too. So that's another thing. Like with my challenge, I keep plugging this, but this is just, I'm trying to take everything and put it into, make it as easy as possible for people. So that's kind of what I've been doing with the challenge. But having like a community group, so like we have our private Facebook group. So having that virtual community where people can bounce ideas off of each other, and if someone's struggling one day, they can have the encouragement to, continue on, or get tips and different tricks to, if you have carb cravings, what can you, use to combat those. So the support, I think, is a huge thing. And then, just really going into it with a goal in mind as well, whether that be weight loss or more energy throughout the day, knowing like what your why is. So this is what I'm sure Brian Williamson from Keto Evangelist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he made this really great podcast about talking about like what your why is. So finding out, why are you doing this? Is it like, what is your specific goal in this, and what is your why? So I think that's a huge thing as well, that you need to kind of figure out, okay, why am I actually going to embark on this, and what do I want to get out of this is a huge thing to, know from the beginning. So.
Do you have any favorite media? I'm not going to say books, because I have an abusive relationship with books. I start them and I never finish them. Instead, I just go to YouTube or Wikipedia that book and get to the heart of it. I can't remember all of that information, but that's just me. Do you have any sort of recommendation for people as far as books, videos, content, articles, scientific literature, anything at all? Yeah.
So for me, I love podcasts. So I think podcasts are a huge learning tool. And like you said, like I have books everywhere. There's like books, all over the table right now that are keto. And I love looking at them and going through them. But I think podcasts are a really huge way to get a lot of information without having to sit there and read. So when you're cleaning, or you're, driving, or doing work on your computer that may not take much brain fuel, just busy work. And for me, I'm always putting on different podcasts and listening to different things, but there's a lot of, you can just search keto on the podcasts and you'll come across, the different ones. I have like a whole list of them. Like I can go through them, but, so I think those are a huge learning tool, and something that, definitely people can take advantage of. And if you're looking for specifics within keto, like you can even search, keto and type 2 diabetes, or keto and performance, or stuff like that, and you'll find something. So I think that's a huge resource.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts till I started my own. I just go directly to the person who I am curious about and say, hey, you want to come and sit down and have a conversation with me? And it works out really well that way. I think there's the challenge of way too much information. At least that's my concern, that there's way too much, especially on Instagram. I don't know how you guys are able to have 2,000, how you can follow 2,000 people. It's just a lot of people. But so which brings me to an interesting question. How do you limit your information intake?
Good question. So when I'm listening, there's so many different things. And I think it just goes back to kind of looking at remembering like the actual science behind it, and really taking things with a grain of salt, and then kind of going back and diving back into it, on my own. But also there is so much stuff that, we still don't know. And so it is hard to weed through everything. But I think if you're looking at the information and doing your own research on top of that, and kind of weeding through it, I think that's like the main thing. And, I think we still have a long way to go with that. So.
Okay. Here's an interesting question for you. Are there any women specific issues or concerns when they go on a ketogenic diet?
Yeah. So what I've seen, just with some people that I've worked with is, the hormones is a huge thing. But with that, it's, the thing is, a lot of people don't give it enough time. So we talk about, becoming fat adapted and regulating our hormones and stuff like that. But a lot of people, they want the quick fix. They want to become adapted in a week, or they want, hormones to be regulated within a week. But it takes time. And I think, especially with women, sometimes it's a huge thing where people, where women, they'll either lose their, monthly, period, or they'll actually get it when they start keto right away, abnormal. But that's kind of your body just adjusting. And it's like, okay, if you've been, a sugar burner your whole life, and you're trying to change the fuel source that you're using and change your metabolism and different things within your body's going to say, okay, I need some time to adjust to this. And it's going to take time. So I think that's one big thing that a lot of people fall into, not just women, but it's giving yourself some time and giving your body some time to adjust. And then with women specifically, it's, especially in the beginning, being able to fuel your body the right way. So with a lot of diets, it's a lot of, caloric restriction. So I think especially for women in the beginning, it's important that they're getting enough fat in. And I'm not saying, add a stick of butter to your coffee every morning, but focus on, instead of, and I went through this too. When I first started keto, I was, afraid of fat, and I did the low carb thing, but I also did low fat at the same time. And I felt horrible, and my hormones were messed up. And, then I kind of did more research into it myself. And as I started adding a little bit more fat in and healthy fats, it started to get better. So I think that's one major thing for women, especially, to just, make sure you're getting enough fat in the beginning, and make sure you're, keeping conscious of your carbohydrate intake. And then also, it's so individualized as well. So like if you're, like, for example, a CrossFit athlete, and if you're someone who's a woman who's doing, CrossFit every single day, 7 days a week, and then you try to transition to keto right away. And I think that's one of the big things, is that, overtraining and stuff like that is a huge deal. So I think giving yourself a transition period, and, maybe backing off your workouts a little bit, and not falling into that trap of overtraining and changing, the way your body is processing fuels at the same time. I think, all of that plays into it. And then also the stress part of it as well, and getting enough sleep, and it just all around all of those type of things.
Okay. Let's just backtrack a little bit to athleticism. Right now, what kind of sports could potentially benefit from a ketogenic low-carb approach? I understand that everything is just relatively new here. There's the fat adaptation and all of those kind of things that will play into it. But just to hypothesize, where would the strengths lie and where would be the potential weaknesses?
Yeah, so, I mean, in my opinion, I think that every type of athlete can benefit from adopting a low-carb keto, or at least low-carb lifestyle, and then kind of implement different strategies within that after. So, for example, a lot of people, with a different type of sports, whether it's a glycolytic sport or more aerobic sport, a lot of people kind of look at the energy systems that we have. So we have, the creatine phosphate system, which is, your burst of energy or your burst of fuel that you use within, 10 seconds of activity. And you have the anaerobic glycolysis, which is the next, glucose source that you would use, in a high intensity type workout or high intensity bout of exercise. And then you have the aerobic system. But a lot of people kind of look at those systems separately and say, okay, I'm using this one at this time, this one at the other. But what people don't really understand is that these different systems are working all at once in your body. So it's kind of like a seesaw going back and forth between, okay, I'm in this anaerobic or in this aerobic state. But I think with adopting a low-carb keto lifestyle, you can adapt your body to become more metabolically flexible and metabolically efficient at using fat as a fuel. You have an advantage over anyone else because you're able to kind of tap into your fat stores a little bit more and spare, those glycogen stores for those bursts of activity. So whether it be, an ultra marathoner or a CrossFit athlete or a strength athlete, I think there's potential for all of these different types of activities, and then individualizing it towards what you're doing and what your exercise is. So, maybe a CrossFit athlete will need a little bit more carbs before and after their workout. But if they have a solid foundation where they can be more metabolically efficient and flexible, they'll have the advantage. And then also the advantages that come with the mental stamina from being in a ketogenic state. So having that mental stamina, having the recovery, the reduced inflammation, all of those type of things kind of play into it. So it's not just looking at that one bout of exercise. It's looking at the whole picture. How are you recovering? How are you, getting good fuel sources, and how are you, what's your mental performance like? What's your neural fatigue? Like how are these all playing together? So I think looking at the big picture in terms of sports performance is what we need to really kind of focus on.
Is there some sort of training that you still do these days?
Yeah. So so when I moved to San Diego, I was doing a lot of CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting before I moved to San Diego. And then I kind of took a little bit of time off from that and was doing just some more boot camp type things on my own. So, and then I just joined another CrossFit gym because I missed it. So I'm getting back into that and doing some strength training. I've gotten a little bit away from doing, WODs and stuff like that, but I do some high intensity training a few days a week. And then I focus more on strength. I'm doing a squat program right now. But I also am trying to get back into triathlons a little bit. So I'm starting to incorporate a little bit more cycling here and there and a little bit more running. I get bored easily, so I go back and forth between a bunch of different stuff. But yeah, right now just kind of focusing on building a little bit more strength up, and then, just kind of having fun with it, enjoying what I'm doing. I think that's a huge thing too with a lot of exercise. A lot of people, do it for the wrong reasons. So I think, having a goal and actually enjoying what you're doing is a huge part of it. Cause, when my exercise each day, that's like my therapy. That's what I do to get away and, get out of my head. So I think that's what a lot of people need to focus on, doing something that they enjoy.
Well, considering that you've studied CrossFit athletes and considering that you've been into the world yourself and now knowing all about keto, how many days would you recommend practicing?
What do you mean? Like
going to do CrossFit? Yeah. And for how long? I mean, is there something different now about your training that has changed or you would recommend?
So I think it just depends. So are you a CrossFit athlete who's trying to, go to the CrossFit games, or are you someone who is like a lot of the typical gyms, CrossFit gyms out here, it's just your everyday, person trying to, get a good workout in. For me, particularly when I started keto, like I said, I definitely in the beginning was doing low carb, low fat, and I was feeling horrible during my workouts. But as I started incorporating more fat and started, understanding what to do, I started to feel better in my workouts. And for me, a lot of the recovery aspect of it. So I had an injury in college called exertional compartment syndrome. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I want to hear about it.
So I was training for a half Ironman, and I kind of overdid it when I was a junior in college, and I developed something called exertional compartment syndrome. And it's basically in your lower legs, your muscles kind of, the easiest way to explain it is they kind of get too big too fast, or they get swollen. And the fascia that surrounds your muscles doesn't stretch enough as your muscles are getting big. So what happens is it starts to compress on your nerves in your legs. And so as I was training, even though I was studying athletic training, I, kind of overlooked it. I thought it was just shin splints. But I started getting something called drop foot, which is when you run, you can't really dorsiflex or pick up your foot as you're running. And it just started to get worse and worse. So I ended up having to get a bilateral fasciotomy, which basically is just they go into the different compartments in your lower leg and they make a slit in the fascia, and it helps to relieve the pressure. So ever since that happened in college, my legs I get inflammation and a lot of swelling when I overdo it. And I had that problem with CrossFit when I would be doing too much, plyometric type stuff, jump ropes and box jumps and just going too heavy and stuff like that. But then when I actually did start keto, and after a few months of getting into it and doing it right, I noticed, better recovery times and stuff like that. So that's been my main reason for, still, or not reason, but one of the great things about keto that I love is just having, better recovery and being able to exert myself a little bit more. But in terms of what you were saying, like for individualized, I think it just depends. Like I said, it depends what your goal is. And if you are, a CrossFit athlete who's trying to get to regionals or, the CrossFit games, I think if you're, right. So for CrossFit, do you know anything about a little bit about CrossFit? I don't know.
Not at the regional level, more like a box level. Once in a while, I go do it to steal some of the concepts and apply it to my gym workout. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So with CrossFit, like the CrossFit games are in August. So kind of the progression is, they have the CrossFit Open, which is from February to March, which is basically a little over a month of workouts that are done every week. And you can any person who goes to CrossFit gym can take part in these open workouts, and you're scored and you're by a judge, and then you implement your scores into the system. And if you reach a certain score or you get to a certain level, you go on to regionals. Regionals are in May and June, and so that's like the next level. And then after regionals is the CrossFit Games in August. So in that sense, I would, if you were an athlete who was getting to the CrossFit Games but you wanted to try keto, I would probably implement it, right after. So that September to January season where it's your off season and you have a few months to kind of play around. That would probably be the best time to play around with it for sure.
Okay. So when do you know the exercise has gone too far, or you're fatiguing too much, or you're pushing yourself too much and you want to back out? How do you calibrate yourself?
For me, my limiting factor, like I said, is my legs. So whenever I'm getting, I sometimes get, this is for me specifically though, just like tingling and stuff like that, which is due to the nerve compression from, my injury. So when I notice things like that, or, if I'm not sleeping well, or if I'm just, I can kind of tell if I'm overtraining a little bit, like just listening to my body, and going through it. I think that's my main thing. I'm just become more intuitive with that. And I think that's a lot for people to understand, is that they have to kind of listen to their body and kind of figure out the difference between what's sore and what's overdoing it, or, looking at other aspects of it, like the psychological, the stress aspects of that. I think that's huge. Just, becoming in tune with your body and understanding those things for yourself as an individual.
Okay. Besides, actually, let's move on to another topic.
Sorry, am I talking too much?
No, you're doing great. I'm learning quite a lot of things. I work out often, maybe not as hardcore as you guys do. I do Ashtanga yoga. I do weight training, and a little bit of plyometric and body weight exercises, and some explosive stuff all over the place. Makes no sense. But I think like you said, there's a psychological component to it that, you're doing something, you're challenging yourself. That's what I hunt for. So what are some of the lessons you've learned as doing what you're doing and challenging the common wisdom or the conventional wisdom, knowing that there's many people who would be more than happy to shut you down and suppress you?
Yeah. So for me, it's just kind of, getting out of my own comfort zone, and also just, I've seen the results that this has had for myself and with a lot of people that I've worked with over the years. And I think that I try to look past all the politics and all the, the money and all that stuff that's out there. But I would just, for me, this is my passion, and I love, learning new things every day, and teaching people about keto. And I think that if you, are truly passionate about something, you should, follow that and look into it more, and, just dive into it, and don't really listen to what other people are saying, and kind of just, take it on for yourself. And, not be afraid of going against the grain or going against the standard of care. 'Cause, I think that's what a lot of us, fall into these days. So.
What kind of,
that would be my advice.
Okay. What kind of research would you like to see, if you have any preferences?
Just everything, with keto, like keto and anything, like, there's a lot of therapeutic research out there, just more of that. And, looking more into, cancer, and obviously with exogenous ketones, there's a lot of that coming out now, doing more research on that, and, seeing if there is potential with those things. And, I just want to see it all.
Okay. Where do you see yourselves in the next 5 to 10 years?
5 to 10 years. I really would like to, like I said, I'm starting to work with some local doctors here. I really want to, have some type of business or practice that incorporates, bringing together the doctors and the nutritionists and trainers, and kind of having everybody on the same page, and being able to work with clients and patients, and teaching them how to, develop a better lifestyle. But I think what's missing right now is a lot of, doctors and nutritionists and trainers are not on the same page with that. So I'd love to kind of develop, or we're trying to develop, a community here, and develop a system here where we can, be a model for other healthcare communities to work together. And, there is some type of competition, but at the same time, there's so many people out there that need help, and that, are just looking to understand this stuff. So, I think it's just, getting out there and getting more people to understand it and, implement this type of lifestyle.
Okay, was that your message? Or do you have any final messages of any sort? Because unless I've missed out on something, have I missed out on anything that we need to cover?
I think we covered a lot.
The mic is yours.
I guess for me and just what I've experienced over the past few months, it's just anybody out there who has a passion for something and they may feel, stuck in some other job or something that they don't really enjoy doing. I think you really need to just get out of your comfort zone and take that leap of faith and, go after it, because you don't want to, be looking back in 10 years and wishing you were doing that. So, that would be my main message for in general.
Sounds like you really did not like your last job.
No, I liked it. It wasn't my passion. It wasn't what I wanted to wake up every day and put my energy towards. So.
Well, I'm glad to see you making progress and helping this world become a better place. You're a good person, and I really appreciate good people in our world who are honest and more than happy to continue learning and help others grow. I can sense that from you as well. Okay, I sound like a prophet of some sort, which is horrible. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Let's give you a final plug. How can people find you?
You can go to my website, www.killinitketo.com, no G after Killin. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, same name, Killin It Keto. Those are the main places.
All right. And guys and gals, if you're looking to take the 21-day challenge, that's on the website as well. Just go to the website and there's the big banner on there which says, join the challenge. So go join the challenge. Rachel, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You have been an absolute blast talking to, and your narrative has had me entranced. So you're awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you for listening to the show. You can visit us at ketogeek.com to check out our premium keto-friendly and low-carb food products, including our infamous energy pods, made from the best ingredients we could find in the entire country. We also recommend signing up for our newsletter at ketogeek.com/signup, where you get exclusive discounts, rewards, product announcements, and the latest content we are working on. You also get a 10% discount on your entire order when you sign up. Go to ketogeek.com/signup to join the low-carb playground.